Hey everyone, happy Wednesday, September 14th. It's pretty crazy. We're just basically halfway through September. And yes, for those that are watching on YouTube, this is, I think, the first episode that I've ever recorded without a hat, at least for a long time. So everyone gets to see my crazy flow that I have going. It's not even really a flow, it's just a mop. I think at this point I look like a total dweeb. But that might be coming to an end in the next week. I'm obviously not at my house right now. I'm at my uncle's for the next couple of days. Just been dealing with some stuff at the house and all that. Going to go up and to my parents' house on Thursday for about a week and a half and all that stuff. But yes, no hat. That is how it is right now. For today's episode, obviously, I am back from Aruba, so we're back to 3 episodes a week for this week before we go back to dailies next week. For this episode, Evan Rodrigues officially has signed in Colorado. I'm going to go over why that's a good fit for him and why I couldn't believe some of the pushback I got when I said that this is going to be a big loss for the Penguins, and we'll also go into some training camp battles and why, I think it might be, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, you know, I wouldn't say a boring camp, but I guess maybe a mellow training camp for the Penguins with not a lot of spots truly available. So that's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So officially right now, as I'm recording this about 11:40 on a Tuesday night, 30 days away from Penguins regular season hockey. You all will be listening to this on Wednesday. Excuse me. So at that point, it'll be 29 days until Penguins hockey. So basically, guys, 4 weeks until the regular season starts. It's going to be in the peak of fall when that starts. I am really looking forward to it. I am just sick and tired of the summer. I think at this point. So big news happened on Monday as Evan Rodrigues signed with the Colorado Avalanche, 1 year, $2 million contract. That's a steal for the Avs. I mean, just a really nice contract for them. And honestly, I think Rodrigues is going to thrive there. Plays in a high-paced, high-tempo offensive system, can play on their second line, can play on their third line, can play on their fourth line. I think he has the potential to be, excuse me, I don't know what's going on with my cough. I think he's the potential to be even better for them than he was for the Penguins this past season. And, I did have a tweet, if I can go find this here, where I said, this was a huge deal for the Avalanche. He can play multiple positions. He's good offensively, defensively. And when it comes to the Penguins' depth, I still will say this. I think that's going to be a big loss to their depth. And I had people come in my mentions and say that, big loss. What are you talking about? And it's just like, okay, sure, he's a streaky player, but okay, name me a depth player for the Penguins who had over 20 goals last year. I know Carter had 18, so maybe you can count him, but I don't know if people are going to count on Carter like playing like that again last year. And I know Danton Heinen was close to 20, but is he going to score at that pace again this year? I'm definitely, I guess, not concerned about it, but I'm tempering my expectations because I think he's going to be in that that 11 to 15 range, if you ask me. Because you look at the rest of the depth right now, I don't think there's a lot of other depth players that are going to go out there and score 20. Because Barry Kapanen, probably not. Teddy Blueger, Brock McGann, Drew O'Connor, none of those guys. Heinen maybe has a chance because he scored 18 last year. Again, wouldn't count on it, but you see what I'm saying here. I mean, you still got to replace 20 plus goals, and I don't think the Penguins have done that with this offseason with regards to their depth. He is a very versatile player. His underlying numbers were very solid for the team last year. When I did a season review, I'll go to Natural Stat Trick again, played in all 82 regular season games. I think he was the only member of the Penguins to do that. When he was on the ice, the Penguins had 57% of the shot attempts. They also had 53% of the actual goals for. They had 51% of the expected goals for, 57% of the scoring chances, 56% of the high danger chances. So really elite underlines. Yes, I know he couldn't finish at times down the stretch. But this is a good player and a player that the Penguins are going to miss. And I had someone in my mentions say, it's time to let some Wilkes-Barre players fill that spot. But okay, who? And I'm not trying to sound like a total clown here, but who is going to fill that spot? Is Drew O'Connor going to come up here and score 20 goals? I liked his play last year, especially towards Halloween, early October, heck, even into November, before he got, I think, banged up and he had to be sent down. But do someone really think that he's going to come in here and put up 15 to 20 goals in his first full NHL season? I just don't see it. To be honest with you guys, I don't see that. So it's just, it kind of boggles my mind where people saying it's time to let some Wilkes-Barre players come in when, in all honesty, I'm not trying to sound like a clown. The Penguins don't have a lot down there. Terry Puustinen, okay, cool, had a really good year in Wilkes-Barre, but is he ready to make the full jump yet? I don't know. Radim Zohorna, is he ready to make that full jump yet? I don't know. He's on a one-way contract this year, so you would hope that he will try to make that jump. Drew O'Connor, obviously, just talked about. Alex Nylander, I think at this point he's probably nothing more than an AHL guy. I don't think he's going to be a major contributor to the team this year. Obviously could be. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but who knows? And as another one of my Twitter followers said this to me, when you sign someone like McGinn and Kapanen for a combined $6 million, those kind of moves, they catch up to you. And, I definitely think the Penguins, with McGinn's money with 2.75 and Kapanen with 3.5, I'm sure, maybe some of them are thinking right now, man, we really could have used some of that money to go after Evan Rodrigues or maybe another player in free agency. It's just, you have to get the depth moves right. And right now, I'm definitely questioning if the Penguins got their depth moves right over the offseason. And again, I said this on an episode, I think it was last week, without Danton Heinen, this bottom six would honestly be one of the worst in the Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin era. Because at least from Heinen, you can definitely count on him to score, I think, upwards of 15 goals, maybe even a bit more. Other than that, with everyone from last year, even Jeff Carter, who I know had 18, is he going to do that again after what he showed in the second half? Kasperi Kapanen, Teddy Bluger, Brock McGinn? Probably not, right? At least for a good chunk of those guys. So, it's the depth. I still don't think it's as good as last year. I'll throw Ryan Poehling in there as well. But, these are the kind of moves that a contender has to get right. And I do think the Penguins are going to be kicking themselves, that they didn't have the space to sign Rodrigues to only $2 million. That's chump change for him. He played for basically almost the league minimum last year, put up some really good numbers, and he got, I guess, a raise, but it really wasn't that big of a raise, to be honest with you all. So at the end of the day, he's still on a very nice contract. And if he plays well again for Colorado this year, I could definitely see him getting a much heftier contract next year, whether it's in Colorado or it's somewhere else. But, I wish all the best to him. I think he is a player that was very misunderstood in the Penguins fandom. I think a lot of people just, they see what happened for some of the games down the stretch, and it's like, oh, well, you can't sign him and all that. But then you look at what he did in the playoffs when he played like he did in the first half, and it's like, okay, the talent has always been there. He just, he went on, his finishing just basically cratered. So, look at the data, watch him play. He is a good, useful, effective player. And for the people that don't like him or that are calling me an idiot about that, I disagree with you. The numbers back it up, at least for me. And, I think the Penguins, they will be kicking themselves if they did not find a way to bring him back at some point this offseason, even though they don't have a lot of cap space, with some of the other moves that they've made over the last couple of years, even this year, like Kasperi Kapanen. So that's all I'm going to say on that. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to get into some training camp stuff. Camp, believe it or not, Yins, is a week away at this point. It's crazy that it's just come up this quick. We're back to daily episodes next week for Locked On Penguins, so we're going to get into that. And just, I guess, just some battles that may take place, even though, again, I don't think it's going to be, too hectic of a camp for the Penguins. But Before I get to that, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. You can find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest, easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. That has been online where the game starts. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. You want to follow me on Twitter, Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at @LA_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So let's get into some camp talk here. Again, basically, it is a week away. I mean, well, when you all listening to this on Wednesday, it will officially be a week away from starting. And honestly, when you look at the camp roster and you look at some of the open spots, there really is not too much intrigue when it comes to the camp this year. I mean, in terms of like rookies that have a chance, I would say the only two that really have ones are POJ and Drew O'Connor. Maybe Radim Zohorna shows up in camp and preseason, but I think right now when you look at the forward depth, I think he's a little below O'Connor, Ryan Poehling, even Josh Archibald, and some of those guys. POJ, I think he's going to have a chance to make this team out of camp. I mean, he just signed to a new contract, all one way. I believe he'll need waivers. He'll need to clear waivers to be sent down to Wilkes-Barre. It almost feels like it's now or never for him, and also feels like it's that way with Drew O'Connor. So those are really the only two rookies, at least from Wilkes-Barre, that I think have a shot at making it. I think, if POJ does not make it out of camp, I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks now, I do think that he's probably going to get dealt. Just because, Dumoulin, I think if they were going to trade him, they would have done that by now. You're not getting rid of Chris Tang. You're not getting rid of Jan Ruta, Jeff Petrie. I don't think you're going to get rid of Marcus Pettersson. I think, honestly, it might just be too late right now. I think if anyone gets moved, it's just going to be a depth D. So, and I know, it's probably a bit weird with training camp 1 week away that there are still 9 defensemen, but, there's also still 30 days left until opening night. The Penguins, they do have, about 4 weeks at this point to figure out, if they do want to either send a defenseman down or potentially trade one before the roster cuts are available, are due, I guess I should say. Obviously, again, that 12th forward spot, very much up for grabs. Ryan Poehling, Drew O'Connor, Radim Zohorna, Josh Archibald. Just going to be like, a mix of those guys just competing for it, in my opinion. But, like, do any of those guys, I guess, really wow you from like, oh, I'm really excited to see what he can do, I guess outside of Doc? I mean, Poehling hasn't been that good in Montreal. Maybe a fresh start helps him, but, Archibald, kind of know what he is. Zohorna, guess he's okay. I mean, you can even throw Jake Kajula in there and that kind of stuff. I mean, we basically just know who he is at this point. But, I guess that all just falls into the line of, I guess there's not a lot of big intrigue coming into this game. I mean, the goalies, they're set. Maybe the D pairs with how they shake out. And I agree with, with CK4 for response code. If Mike Sullivan does decide to go with a Ty Smith, Jan Ruta pairing, which I am in favor of, I think that would be best for both, Smith and just the Penguins as a whole. That I think could be a good indicator that the Penguins are trying to trade POJ before the season starts, because, with Ty Smith, he's still a project, I think, at this point anyway, but it does him little good if he is sent down. Like, what is he going to learn down in Wilkes-Barre, especially after he had a really good rookie season in New Jersey? I mean, you're just going to give him top pairing minutes in Wilkes-Barre. I think, you need to put him with a seasoned veteran in Ruta, if that's the guy who has played with top players throughout his career, especially Victor Hedman down in Tampa Bay. And you got to see how he does. You don't have to give him, 20 minutes a night, but you can shelter him a little bit like they did with Matheson. You can give him, 13, 14, maybe even upwards of 15 minutes a night. See how he does, see how he's handling those, see how he's doing in the offensive zone, see how he's, maybe not turning the puck over as much in the defensive zone. And if he keeps doing that to on a very, good degree, they can maybe bump up his minutes a little bit. So, I guess I'm a little intrigued about the defense. I mean, I feel like I know what most of the pairings are going to be. I do think Pettersson is going to start out with Petrie once camp starts. I know a lot of the Penguins players are back in Pittsburgh. They're starting to skate with about a week to go until camp starts. I think one of the only players that's not back yet is Chris Tang. He's still doing some training in Montreal. He's probably going to come in like the day before, but Sid just came in a few days ago. Malkin's been in there for about a week. A lot of the other players have been, they've been, returning on their own and all that stuff. But, again, when you look at camp and when you look at the open spots available with, that third left-hand D spot and that 12th forward, outside of that, again, there's really not much else to look forward to during the practices and during the preseason games. Yeah, you always want, your prospects and some of the other players down in Wilkes-Barre to look good. And so, the fans can be like, oh yeah, we actually may have someone that's, not bad down there. I totally understand that. But, are a lot of those guys going to be making, pushes for an everyday job? Me personally, I can't see that. So, we'll have to see. But again, I'm so excited for camp. I'm excited, to follow the practices and see how everyone's doing. I just, wanted to, pump the brakes with some of the people that are just like, really excited about it and just say like, hey, there's not a lot of open spots right now, basically only 2 competitions. There's just, really not a lot of intrigue going into this camp. At least in my opinion. Maybe you all think differently. You can let me know in the YouTube comments and all that stuff. But that's just at least my opinion going into this. So a little more to get to for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. That's all coming up right after this commercial break. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter, Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So, you're starting to see, some more and more moves being made, some PTOs are being signed and all that stuff. Again, in my opinion, I don't expect the Penguins to really do anything when it comes to those. I think they're, excuse me, I think they're pretty comfortable with the group that they have going into camp. I think, they like what they have in Wilkes-Barre. They like that they have what they have overall on the main team and the depth behind them, and especially, in goal as well. So I don't think you're going to see a similar situation to what we saw last year with Brian Boyle, where it was just, he kind of signed at the last minute and it was like, okay, maybe there is an opening there for that 13th forward spot. I think right now the Penguins, at least from how they're probably feeling, I think they're comfortable with their depth and all that stuff. I'm definitely really looking forward to everything with regards to this team this year. I think this is a team that is potentially going to surprise some people this year. I definitely think they're a surefire playoff team. You are probably going to see people pick the Penguins to miss the playoffs. Do not give them the time of day. I really don't know what they're looking at. I know the Atlantic got maybe a little bit tougher over the offseason, but I'm still not really sold on some of those teams like the Red Wings or the Senators. I think they're maybe still a year or two away from really competing for a playoff spot. When you look at the Metro again, Carolina, New York right there, Pittsburgh, Washington, the other 4 teams, I don't think they're at the Penguins level. And I think the Penguins, they should easily finish top 4 in the Metropolitan Division, if not top 3. I currently have them as the 3rd place team in this division. I think that, that could be upwards of number 1 or number 2, especially if, the Rangers take a step back this year. Igor Shesterkin is not as good. Or potentially if, their Carolina Hurricanes with, they're being out with, Pacioretty gone and Trocheck is gone and Niederreiter and all that stuff, could they take a little bit of step back? Could their goaltending potentially not be as good? I think that's going to be something really big to watch this season. But, I'm still pretty bullish on this team. I think, again, they upgraded on defense. The forward group, it's okay. It's not as good as last year. It's fine. I think, again, one of the biggest questions I have is, just the goaltending tandem. Can both of them stay healthy? Can Casey DeSmith put up the numbers that he had in the second half last year? Can he do that for a full season? Can Tristan Jarry stay healthy through a full season? Can he continue doing what he did during the regular season last year into this year and show the Penguins that, he deserves a contract extension? Because, I think the Penguins are playing the cards pretty close to the vest right now. I think they're doing the right thing by not really extending him just yet. They think they probably want to see how he does this season before really committing to him for the next, 3 to 4 to maybe even 5 years. I think 3 to 4 is probably that sweet spot. You don't want to give too much term to a goaltender just because the position is so volatile, and all that stuff. So, I think, Hextall, he probably just wants to see how he does. He puts up good numbers. Obviously that asking price is going to go up. Jari makes about 3.5 million, I think, right now. So, we'll just have to see when it comes to that. So it's going to be, a little bit of a shorter episode today, only about 20 minutes from what I have right now. But, these are going to be ramped up a lot more, especially next week as camp gets underway. Again, the fact that we're returning to dailies on Monday. Crazy enough, guys. Monday is the return of dailies with, and at that point, there will only be, I believe, 3.5 weeks to go until the season. That gets me fired up. I'm ready for the fall. I'm ready for the temperatures to start changing. One thing's for sure, for me at least, once I get to the end of summer, I can't stand it. I hate the bugs outside. One thing about me, I always hate them. That's just a little fun fact about me. And before you know it, we're going to have preseason Penguins hockey. It's going to be coming in the next couple of weeks. So, get ready for that schedule. And, we're going to, fans are going to be allowed back to practices and all that. And then before long, y'all will be back at games again. I'll be coming up for at least one game this year, November 15th against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I can't wait. I'll potentially be a member of the Pittsburgh community after that. Really excited for that. So a lot of big things hopefully coming for the show. I said this on Twitter on Monday. I'll say it again. Season 4 of this episode of this podcast is going to be the best one yet. I fully stand by that. The content that I have planned for you all is going to blow your minds away, especially if I can potentially if I do move to Pittsburgh, I can potentially get some game credentials. It'll be a lot of fun. Potentially talk to some of the players after the game. Maybe even Mike Sullivan, get some good quotes for you all and all that stuff. So that's just a tease of what I might potentially have to offer for you all this season. Again, I do think this is going to be the best season yet. But that'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I really appreciate all of you listening to this one. I'll have another episode for you all on Thursday and then another episode for you all on Friday before we hit dailies starting next week. So again, thank you all so much for listening, and I will talk with you all soon.